Join ForumIAS Academy, trusted by hundreds of toppers, including IAS Rank 1 Anudeep Durishetty, Shruti Sharma, and Ishita Kishore.
Hello everyone, welcome to Key Concepts of Anthropology. We are going to discuss in brief today about post-colonialism as a school of thought in anthropology. So you must have seen through the UPSC syllabus of anthropology, and we have a very peculiar unit in paper 1 which stands to be the foundation of the entire subject, which is related to theories, right? So we have a lot of theories which form the base of this particular discipline. One amongst them, and it would be clearly more suitable to say the most recent amongst them, is called as post-colonialist school of thought. So what do I understand by this particular idea? If we break down the terminology, it boils down to one thing, that it has got to do with the school of thought which emerged in anthropology after the era of colonization or imperialism ended. So therefore, as a matter of fact, what kind of ideology will this school of thought propose? This is going to highlight the gross Eurocentric perceptions which had been in the anthropological milieu for a very large period of time. So if you look at normal schools in anthropology, if I begin with classical evolutionism and diffusionism and so on, we see that there was a huge bias with respect to the European way of life, or European way of life was considered to be the most premium or the most mature civilizations. Right. Why was that happening? Because the scholars were studying the other cultures at that particular point in time with the European lens. Therefore, they tended to be biased towards the European way of life. So automatically, when countries started to become imperialism free, they challenged this particular notion. And what kind of notions were they? So you must have seen certain texts which call the people belonging to, Asian and African countries, and for that matter, certain tribal sections, they are called as primitive or savage. So these were the terminologies which were given by the European scholars while they were studying different cultures. So post-colonialist school in anthropology specifically started to highlight the kind of issues which were there with respect to the anthropological research milieu during the time of imperialism. So the first and the natural questioning was done to the worldview, right? And what was the worldview at that particular time? It was Eurocentric. So this was challenged, right? The second idea which was brought to forefront was called as the alterity. What do I mean by this particular term? When we are open to alternate views or alternate opinions apart from the broad cultural milieu, we welcome the notion. For example, if I am scholar A and you are scholar B, and both of us are studying a particular community, if I am very rigid with my thought process, with my research work, I will not be able to accommodate the other's point of view, right? So that kind of an idea is called as a rigid field work or a rigid research work. On the other hand, if on the same subject, scholar B has done certain work, and I am open to connotations and additions from that particular scholar, that means I am open or amenable to accommodating my worldview. So alterity of worldview or alterity of research or notions came to be accepted in the post-colonialist school of thought. A more refined term to understand what I mean by this is a term coined by a scholar called Edward Said, and he named the school of thought as Orientalism. What is Orientalism? It is more specific to the specific cultures and their perspective about their cultures from their lens. Meaning, if an Indian is studying Indian culture, they will be giving an Orientalist opinion. Whereas if a foreign scholar, if a United States scholar or a European scholar is studying Indian culture, they are bound to look or judge the Indian culture with respect to the background they are coming from, right? So this particular alterity forms the bedrock of second notion of post-colonial school in anthropology. The third idea is of diaspora. Now, this is a very common term, and we all understand what is diaspora. People or groups of people who have moved or have been forced to move from their home countries to other countries, right? So, when this movement facilitates, when this movement happens, they become diaspora in a particular country. And when this particular movement happens, there is an essential intermingling of cultures. So what do I mean by mingling of cultures? For example, if you move from India to the United States, so you are taking your Indian culture with you, and United States has its own culture. So therefore, in your daily life, there will be certain interjunctions where you will find that there are certain mingling of cultural traits which happen if you live in that particular cultural construct for a longer period of time. Now, mingling is inevitable once you are a diaspora, but the very idea that whether this mingling is positive or a negative cultural construct, it will be yet to be seen. Right? So the third idea is of the diaspora, which leads to mingling, and it leads to a phenomena called hybridity. Okay, so you can understand this term hybrid. When two cultures are coming and mixing together, they tend to form a hybrid cultural complex, right? And the next terminology or the next bedrock of the school of thought is imperialism. Now we all know what is imperialism. Centuries of colonial rule and the kind of ramifications and changes which have been brought in our daily lives, the consequences, the laws, they form a part of the imperialist construct. Now these terminologies or keywords which you have seen here, they form the bedrock of post-colonialism as a school of thought in anthropology. Now I'll tell you the related scholars who brought these concepts. One scholar which I mentioned over here is related to Orientalism. So the name of the scholar who gave this idea is Edward Said. Right, who brought the notion that no, Orientalist worldview or Orientalist point of view should also be taken into consideration while doing any kind of an ethnic research work, right? The second scholar is Gayatri Spivak. Now she is more famous for bringing forth the perspective of the subaltern sections in the society. Now, who are the subaltern sections? For centuries of anthropological research, or for that matter, any kind of scientific research, we find that the voices of women, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes have not been heard for a long period of time. Right? In fact, the feminist movement was the first one to highlight that why in a discipline as rich as anthropological milieu, we do not have voices of women, perspectives of women, research on women, apart from marriage, family and kinship. Right? So Gayatri Spivak here highlighted that the views of subalterns should also be included in the anthropological milieu. And who will form the subalterns? So the weaker sections in the society, women, SCs, STs and the tribes. The third and the most prominent scholar which you all might now be aware of is Arjun Appadurai. So Dr. Arjun Appadurai is a scholar of Indian origin but now based in the United States, and he is known to have been written a modern work on imperialism, modernity and colonization and globalization. And what does this work talk about? Now see, he talks about the very interjunction of all these pointers. Eurocentrism, okay, alterity, diaspora and imperialism. What is going to be the interjunction point of all these pointers? That the present society in which we are living in a globalized world. So what is happening as a byproduct of living in this world? There is always an unending movement of people and goods every second. right? The exposure is so much. There's a lot of superimposition of cultures. There is a fight between Sanatan Dharma and the normal modernized Dharma all around us. So what is happening here? Arjun Appadurai is giving us a certain picture of how these scapes are changing in a particular country. Now, I have used a new term here called scape. So he has actually invented the very idea of scapes, and he uses the terminology of 5 scapes to identify that how globalization and intermingling of cultures is influencing the worldview. Thank you.